Comparing the population statistics in the 17th and 18th century France and England, France was more densely populated with more nobles over England's smaller population. In the year 1700, France's population made up 3.1% of the world's population at 21,471,000 people. In the same year, England only made up 1.3% of the world's population at 9,131,000 people. The pie chart shows the world population in the year 1700, giving the perspective of the rest of the world and other European powers. Since there are more people in Asia, there is a constant market that the Europeans are willing to trade from. Other than having a large population, France was a 96% peasant-based society. Alternatively, England's smaller population had a higher concentration of nobles and an 85% peasant population. The small window of nobility in France allowed a more selective upper class that put good officials in good places to help the French economy. For example, J. B. Colbert and his prestige excelled the French influence in world trade. France's economy and taxes hurt the peasant class, which were the majority in France. This later proved problematic and a significant reason for the French Revolution. Even though England had a more noble-based class, a steady tax maintained a stable class structure and economy. Distinguishing the statistics by region and class, France was still predominantly a feudal nation under the Lord's decree. This continued to define class structure that separated the powerful from the powerless in most regions in France. Class was previously based on wealth and family origin. In the changing realm of French politics, authoritative positions could be purchased. This process permitted the middle class to add the inscription of nobility to their name. In contrast to France and feudalism, the power of feudalism in England died because a centralized government was established. This New Age government reform in England reduced the power of the nobility. English class structure after feudalism was redefined into a more democratic system, which foreshadows capitalism. Power held by women in both England and France was limited with great disadvantages. The traditional European women's role before the French Revolution was farming, food, medicine, and helping with the family business. The standard pattern of life for people in France and England was altered from previous ages into a more capitalist society in both countries. The pairs' economies were growing because of the new mercantile system. This put the outdated domestic system behind the new industrial age, where people went out for work to support themselves. This shift from home-crafted items into a modern manufacturing business was supported by the French absolute monarch, King Louis XIV, and profiting merchants. In the industrial age, education in both countries had their peaks at different points in history. One could say England had the advantage over the French because the last English college to be established was 500 years earlier in 1261. On the contrary, one could say that France was late to the education revolution, but however, the French were establishing newer colleges to conform to the industrious economy. The rise of apprenticeship increased the activity in the global economy. Despite the confusing times during the French Revolution, the French government seized all teaching establishments. To buy and manufacture items, a profit-hungry economy is fueled by people on all levels of the social scale. The birth rate in all of Europe was 78 million people in 1600. It then lapsed back to 74.6 million in 1650 and maintained in the 18th century. In relation to the birth rate, the death rate was equally as staggering. Famine, epidemic, disease, and war all contributed to the decimation of the European population over the 17th and 18th centuries. With both populations growing rapidly, food to feed everyone and livestock became difficult. The peasants were affected the most because they could not afford food like the middle class or higher nobility. England overcame this problem through the continuously growing industrial market, which decreased the risk for a famine in the future. France didn't pull through its famine so easily after the cold winters killed the food supply. The lack of food was a reason for the French Revolution. Other than famine keeping the population steady, smallpox and typhus ran rampant through the 18th century English and French cities, such as London and Paris. Large cities allowed the disease to spread easily among people and food sources. For example, unsanitary conditions in large cities and towns gave rats and fleas the ability to feed and multiply beyond control. The rats and fleas would then transmit the disease to humans, who would spread it amongst themselves. Other than typhus, smallpox struck the population in both countries. Close human contact due to the tight and unclean conditions of the cities accelerated the disease. A final catalyst to the growing populations is war and bloody conflicts both countries participated in. The French and their involvement in the 30 Years' War claimed 120,000 French lives in 1635 alone. This loss affected the economy, having to fund for war and pay more taxes because there are less people to pay them. England had its own military conflicts that reshaped the economy, politics, and the population of the nation. In the 18th century, England was fighting the War of the Spanish Succession, which claimed the lives of 125,000 people. These violent conflicts had similar negative consequences on their economies. Finally, out of all of these factors, France subjectively lost less than the British because the French economy kept soaring along with the British, but the French population before applying all of these factors was significantly larger than England's.